We're going to go ahead and get started now, and if anyone comes in, they can just join us. So hi everyone, welcome to our college admissions during COVID-19 event. My name is Claire, and I'm on the Arizona Science Center Teen Advisory Board. And the Teen Advisory Board is the one that puts on these events like the ones you're here for tonight. And our mission as a board is to re-engage teens in STEM through a range of different events, all of which are taking place virtually right now. So before we begin, I'd like to remind you that you can ask questions throughout the event using the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of your screen. And you can ask questions to any of our panelists, and then at the end, they'll get a chance to answer those for you. And before we begin, I'm going to launch a quick set of polls, so you should be able to see that. The first one is just which grade you're in. The second one is what's your favorite school subject, or what do you think you want to major in college? If you're not sure, you can just put your interest right now. And then lastly, where are you in the process of applying to college? I'll give you a few seconds to fill that out, and then I'll share the results. So it looks like we have mostly juniors here tonight, which is consistent with how our last event was in the college series. It was mostly juniors, which makes sense. It's a great year to start thinking about college, figuring out where you want to go, thinking about the application process. So mostly juniors. A lot of people are interested in science. And then a lot of people have started thinking about and applying. So I'll share those results with you so that you all can check it out and see who else is here with you tonight. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our MC, Ananya, and thank you all again for joining us tonight.
Hey everyone, I'm Ananya, and I'm going to be introducing our speakers for today. So for our first two speakers, we have Rohan Jaiprakash and Megan Dales. As a college access mentor, Rohan is committed to helping high school students transition to post-secondary education. Rohan began his time with the NACRC in 2020 and currently works with students at Flagstaff High School, the AmeriCorps Advise AZ initiative. An undergraduate NAU student, Rohan is familiar with the college admissions process and seeks to provide resources to students for everything related to college and career readiness, the FAFSA, scholarships, and exam preparation. Outside of the NACRC, Rohan enjoys hiking, climbing, and exploring the great outdoors in Flagstaff with his dog. Megan Dale started working for the NACRC in 2013 as a media liaison. After receiving a Bachelor's of Science in Journalism from NAU in 2015, Megan was hired as a full-time program coordinator for the NACRC, tasked with facilitating the Helios College Knowing and Going initiative. In this role, Megan provided individual advising to students, facilitated school and community workshops to students and families, and coordinated professional development opportunities for school officials. After receiving a master's in education, Megan continued serving students by becoming an NAU academic advisor, familiarizing herself with college success. In 2019, she returned to the NACRC as program manager. Megan is committed to providing accessible solutions for students pursuing post-secondary education.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to start the presentation off, and then I will switch it over to Rohan. So we're going to be talking about standardized testing and GPA. We're going to give a lot of information, just general information. So we are with the Northern Arizona College Resource Center, which is based out of NAU, which you can tell from our logo there, but we do not recruit or admit for NAU. We help students on any of their post-secondary journeys. So if you ever have any questions, we're here to help. We are going to be talking about standardized testing and GPA. Rohan, you can switch the slide. So like I said, we're going to be talking about general things and then also kind of focusing on how things might have changed due to COVID. So just generally, why should you take the ACT or SAT? So the SAT and ACT are considered in college applications for admissions and scholarship eligibility. Scores can also be used to determine your placement in classes. So a lot of times it can help students not have to take remedial classes. They can use the ACT or SAT to find placement in English classes and math classes. The ACT and the SAT are both common entrance exams, so students are welcome to kind of choose which one works best with them. They're both widely accepted at many schools and universities. We encourage students to determine which one is the best for them by taking practice tests and figuring out which one they like best. It is not required to take both of them, and we really don't recommend that you take both of them. So definitely figure out which one is easier for you. You can visit both websites. You can come talk to me or Rohan, and we can provide some free resources for you to help figure that out. Rohan, you can switch the slide. So what are colleges doing due to COVID-19? So a lot of you are juniors, so you're probably thinking about taking the ACT and SAT because traditionally those are taken in your junior school year. So many schools will not require the SAT or ACT for admission. We're seeing legions of schools that are choosing not to include the SAT or ACT for admissions. We do still recommend that you contact the admissions offices of the schools you plan on applying to. Juniors, that includes you, so if you have some schools in mind. If any of those schools are 3 in-state institutions, you can rest assured that they have already waived the SAT and ACT for admissions requirements. However, some schools might still be requiring the SAT or ACT for scholarship eligibility. So we do recommend that you contact the financial aid department of the schools you plan on applying to just to verify what their policy is. Go ahead, Rohan. So in-person testing policies. So we recommend that you do your due diligence and research when you're planning on taking the SAT or ACT. And this is because many testing sites, for example, local high schools, are closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So there are some in-person testing dates that are available at select locations, but there's definitely some limited availability due to the COVID-19 accommodations. And you may find yourself having to travel to other regions of Arizona to find open testing sites. So for example, we're located in Flagstaff. Our local testing site is Coconino High School, which is currently closed due to the pandemic. So we're advising students to find different sites that are offering the test. We also recommend that you contact the ACT and SAT and the testing site to confirm before the test date. So at the beginning of the closures, quite a few students were still signing up for ACT and SAT test dates. And then when they were showing up to the testing center, they were finding that the testing center was closed down and they were not properly notified. So we recommend that students confirm with ACT or SAT and also confirm with the testing site that they're open. We also recommend that you check with your school counselor to see if your school offers the SAT or ACT in school. So many schools are doing this, and even with school closures, some schools are testing students, and that would be taken typically during your junior year on a school day. So check with your school counselor to see if that's an option for you. I'm going to hand it off to Rohan now. He's going to go into some specifics about the SAT and ACT.
Thanks, Megan. So the SAT is the Scholastic Assessment Test. It's a common entrance exam, like Megan mentioned. It's multiple choice, administered by the College Board. The College Board is a nonprofit third-party organization that works closely with a lot of college entrance boards. So they administer this test in the spring of your junior year or the fall of your senior year. There's multiple options to take it throughout August and June. The range of these dates has been impacted by COVID-19. The number of opportunities has definitely been lessened. So keep in mind that you will have to check the College Board as well as the testing site to make sure that they are still offering these exams at the testing sites and on the dates that you had previously noted. There's going to be 3 sections on this exam: the math, evidence-based reading, and evidence-based writing sections. The math section of which is going to be divided into a calculator and non-calculator section. The good thing about the SAT is that there is no penalty for guessing or leaving an answer blank, meaning that if you don't know, there really is no penalty for guessing, so make sure to put an answer down regardless. And here you can see a list of sites that are confirmed to be closed in Arizona for the December 5th SAT that's upcoming. So make sure that, again, you're checking with the College Board as well as the testing center to make sure that they are still open and offering this test throughout COVID-19. Moving onwards, some other details about it. It's going to be scored out of 1,600 points, and this is between the math and English sections, 200 to 800 points possible for each section. And that is reflective of not having any missed points for guessing or not completing a question. So there is a minimum of 200 points that you can achieve for each section. Again, please complete a question regardless of whether or not you know it. There is no penalty for that. It's going to average around 3 hours with breaks, whereas the essay, which is optional, is going to add another 30 minutes to 50 minutes. And some colleges may require this essay, so you do have to check with each individual school to see if they do. Majority don't, but the benefit of taking the SAT is that it's reported separately from your composite scores for the rest of the SAT, meaning that there really is no harm in taking it, given that you can report it separately and choose to report it, whether you like your score or not. And there's always opportunities to retake these tests between the SAT and the ACT, so keep that in mind as well. The ACT, the American College Test, is multiple choice. It's administered by the ACT. There are 5 sections. Here we have English, math, reading, science, and like the SAT's optional essay section, there's an optional writing section to the ACT as well. Now, this is going to be taken during the spring of your junior year. A lot of high schools in Arizona do offer this for free or for a small cost on site. So check with your counseling staff to see if they are offering this in the spring of your junior year. There is no penalty for incorrect answers, but make sure, again, that you fill in every question because you may be penalized for a question that you don't complete on the ACT. And it's going to be taken at specific testing sites similar to the SAT, but a lot of these centers, just like the SAT, are going to be closed throughout COVID-19. So make sure to check with each site as well as the ACT's website to make sure that a site is open and offering a test. And there is going to tentatively be an option for remotely proctored tests. This is still in the making. So there's no guarantee on this for the late fall or early winter. We haven't seen any news about one yet, but they are working on this. So hopefully by the spring, there will be an option. Again, don't count on this. Make sure that if you are planning to take the test, that you contact your school counseling staff and check with the ACT and the testing sites to make sure that you do have an option for a physical test as well. Now, the composite test is going to average around 3.5 hours with breaks, and this is for the 4 sections, English, math, reading, and science. Each of these sections is going to be graded from 1 to 36, depending on your score. The average of the 4 scores is then taken, and that is going to be your composite score, and that is the score that is reported to colleges once you've completed your ACT. Now, the writing test is going to optionally be an additional half hour, also including the breaks. This is reported separately from the other scores that you receive on the ACT, so there is no harm in taking it again. Some schools may require this, but again, some may not, so please be sure to check with each individual college that you're applying to make sure that they do or do not require this. Now, this is going to be scored from 1 to 6 by 2 different individuals, and the sum of these grades is going to be your score for the writing portion of the test. So that's going to be a range of 2 to 12. Now we're going to talk a little bit about GPA. So generally speaking, most schools are going to look at your standard unweighted GPA for admissions. You may receive weighted scores if you've taken any AP, dual enrollment, or honors classes in high school. Competitive schools will very likely take this into consideration when they're looking at your transcript. So keep in mind that AP, dual enrollment, and honors classes do have some sort of weight on your transcript, but not necessarily are calculated into a weighted GPA by every school. So generally speaking, again, there is no minimum GPA requirement for admission at any school. You'll rarely find a school that describes a minimum GPA for admission. Most schools will, however, have a minimum GPA listed to be considered to apply. So you can check their websites. They might say on average, students who are admitted may have a blank GPA, and that is a good benchmark to start considering which schools are a good fit for you. Some considerations colleges take into perspective when they're looking at your GPA are trends starting with your freshman year. So if you start strong with a really good GPA in your freshman year, make sure to keep this up throughout your other 3 years in high school. Whereas if you feel like you could have improved on your freshman year GPA, they will also take into account any improvements in your GPA over the next 3 years. So there's always room for improvement here, and a general positive trend will look really strong on applications regardless of what your cumulative GPA is. So competitive schools do recommend a GPA between 3.5 and 4.0. There are always exceptions to this rule, but this is because they emphasize rigorous coursework, which includes the weighted AP dual enrollment and honors classes. And these may be taken into extra consideration on these applications and may also impact your GPA in weighted GPA calculations. So most schools recommend a 2.0 and above GPA to be considered. There are occasional exceptions to this. So if you have not met this GPA mark, do not worry, still apply. Make sure that you're explaining exactly why that GPA is consistent to your education, and there's always a chance to be considered with any school. So there's a slight difference between unweighted and weighted GPA, and this starts with the AP dual enrollment and honors classes that we mentioned before. So unweighted GPAs ignore course types and credits in calculations. So that means neither of any of those three classes are going to be considered when calculating your GPA. It's going to be graded on a standard scale. So an A is going to be a 4, an F is going to be a 0, and everything in between is a 1-point step. So the distinction between this and a weighted GPA is that a weighted GPA often uses the standard weighted scale, where every letter grade above an F has 1 point added to it. And in this calculation, they also consider the number of course credits as well as the type of class you're taking in the calculations. So this is what more competitive schools will look at on your transcript, but make sure to check with your high school as well. You can check your unofficial transcript to see if your weighted GPA is considered on your transcript, as well as with any schools you plan on applying to see what they take into consideration with applicants. So wrapping up, do you guys have any questions for us? And if you do, please make sure to put them into the Q&A section. We'll be sure to address those towards the end of the presentation. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much for that. We will now be moving on to our next speaker, who is Roxanne Dewey Murphy. Roxanne Murphy is Director of Statewide Initiatives in the Arizona College Access Network. Prior to this position, she held the position of Program Director for Northern Arizona College Access Center at Northern Arizona University, where she was responsible for the development of the college access centers in counties. In addition, she has provided leadership throughout collaborating with school district personnel, college access professionals, and higher education institution faculty and staff to increase the number of underrepresented students who benefit from post-secondary education. Roxanne holds a master's degree in education leadership from Northern Arizona University.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Let me just go ahead and make sure that I'm sharing my screen. Awesome. Okay, everybody can see my screen?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, sorry, I couldn't see any nods. So, okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. And I love the topic of this webinar, and I think it's really thoughtful to include gap year as part of the conversation. Obviously, as each of you know, juniors and seniors on this call today, so much has changed this year, and you know, your high school, you know, junior year, high school, senior year probably looks nothing like what you thought that it would. And so I'm sure that some of you are thinking about, you know, what is college going to look like, and is college next year, or, you know, for the juniors, when you would start, is that the right path for me? And so I wanted to talk a little bit about gap year, really just what is a gap year, why you might want to pursue a gap year, some things that you can do in a gap year, and then how you would work with your college to make sure that your admission would be deferred. So let's start with what is a gap year. So a gap year is a semester or year of experiential learning typically taken after high school and prior to career or post-secondary education in order to deepen one's practical, professional, and personal awareness. So that's a really long definition. And really what that means is that you're taking a meaningful time away, from high school before you begin college, and sometimes as you enter into your professional career too, but taking some meaningful experience and really getting to know yourself a little bit more and doing something that's out of your comfort zone. And some of the reasons why you might decide to do a gap year, in addition to what we just chatted about, and that college, the college, or I guess the typical college experience might not look like what it's going to look like, or what you thought it was going to look like. But some other reasons why might be so that you could earn some cash, so that you could get some global experience, so that you can learn more about yourself, so that you can do really meaningful work. In the time of a pandemic and with lots of social movements happening, you might have a calling to do something else before you start college, and that's great. And so Gap Year Association, which is on this slide, is an amazing tool and resource for students and families to get acquainted with. It was great to see so many juniors on the call, just thinking about that process. Because if you want to do a gap year, it really does require a lot of planning. And if you're a senior and you are thinking about a gap year, please reach out to me, and I can support you along the way too, if you haven't already reached out to someone. But so on this slide too, it also just includes, a little bit more on here about why you might want to do a gap year and the many skills that you could gain along the way. So I will hop over to my next slide. Let me just get it to move. Okay, some things that you can do in a gap year. So I'm going to start with my personal favorite, and Rohan, who was just on the call, and myself. He's serving as an AmeriCorps member. I actually started at the Northern Arizona College Resource Center as an AmeriCorps member. And so an AmeriCorps member is an amazing opportunity to pursue during a gap year. So AmeriCorps is a national service project, and you typically donate or dedicate about 3 months to 1 year of your time. And you are really gaining skills to get things done for America. That's actually the tagline. So fun fact. And so there's so many different opportunities that you could have in front of you. You could be supporting students through the post-secondary process. You could be building homes for families in need. You could be doing disaster relief, such as with the, supporting the pandemic, with, tornadoes and hurricanes as well. The options are endless. And so if serving your community, serving your local community, serving your nation is something that you're really passionate about, AmeriCorps is a really structured, meaningful project that or program that could support those desires of yours. One of the really cool benefits of AmeriCorps too is that while you are serving, you typically receive a stipend along the way. So a stipend is a little bit different than I guess, a typical paycheck if you are working at a, I guess just your typical job. A stipend usually isn't as much as what a typical, paycheck would be, or what minimum wage is. It's usually somewhere between $0 and minimum wage. And the idea is that you're volunteering and serving your community. And so that's really the benefit that you're looking for, is the way that it makes you feel when you're done. And one of the other amazing things about AmeriCorps is that when you complete your term of service, you actually receive an educational award up to the amount of the Pell Grant. So if you decided to pursue a full-time AmeriCorps term of service before you start college, you would actually begin your first year of college with a little bit over $6,000 in an education award that you could tap into to help you pay for your post-secondary studies. So an amazing opportunity. Happy to share more about it if anyone has any questions. Some other opportunities too. Of course, there's the it's hard to, the WWOOF, and I can't remember all of the acronyms or I'll mess it up, but it's the World Organic Farms Association. And this is for those of you that are passionate about sustainable farming practices. So if you have a passion to go work on a farm or learn more about organic farming, or just try something new, and maybe it's not something that you're passionate about, but you want to learn more about yourself along the way, this is another structured gap year program that could be of interest to you. City Year is another national service program. It's actually an AmeriCorps affiliated too. And what they do is they support public schools in high need areas across the US and across the US, the UK, and South Africa. And once again, an opportunity to earn a stipend and make a real difference in the communities that you would go and serve in. So these are just some examples of the many things that you could do to perhaps go and serve your communities, often receiving some small stipend, sometimes an educational award at the end, and they're a little bit more structured. I just want to make a note that with some of these, right, if you're thinking about a gap year, your gap year might not look like what you perhaps thought it would look like too. A lot of students will do a gap year so that they get that international and global experience, and that might not be possible this year too. So just something to think about along the way. And then a few other things that you can do during a gap year. Work. A job you can learn so much about yourself in just a typical job. You can also, make some additional cash. You can learn a lot of those leadership skills, really set you up for when you start your first year of college to have the, the dedication, the work-life balance that you might need, some of those things. So job is another opportunity for a gap year. And then the other thing too that a lot of students are looking at currently, and that they tapped into this, seniors who just graduated, that they tapped into this year, is that instead of pursuing that 4-year degree or jumping right into the 4-year institution, they started at their community college so that they could be closer to home, be with their families during this pandemic. And so maybe that's an option for you too. Lots of things to consider with a gap year and kind of think through. And I think one of the most important things that students don't always realize if they're considering a gap year is that you're actually going to move forward with applying to your intended colleges most of the time. So what most colleges prefer is that you move forward with the application process, get accepted, and then you will typically write a letter and ask for deferred admission. And so the reason why you're going to want to reach out to your institutions before you would just decide to do a gap year is to see what processes they might have in place that they want you to take to secure your spot at that institution. And you really want to secure your spot at the institution so that you secure your financial aid packages and the scholarships that you would receive that are unique because you're an incoming, high school graduate. And so sometimes students don't know that, if you want to do a gap year, that you have to go through this process, and they'll just take a gap year and then apply to their institutions. And that can really impact the potential financial aid package that you might get. So just, my piece of advice is if you want to pursue a gap year, start reaching out to your institutions now, or the institution that you really want to apply to. Or if you've already applied and got accepted, make sure that you reach out to them and that you know their process for deferred admission. So that is what I wanted to share with you today about gap years. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I'll stop screen sharing too. Awesome. Well, thank you. And if you have any at the end, I'll be on too. So
Thank you so much for that. We'll now be moving on to our last speaker, and that's It's our third speaker, Justin Klein. So Justin Klein is Senior Assistant Director of Admissions at UChicago. He started working in the Office of Admission during his time as an undergrad there. And after graduating with a degree in mathematics in 2017, he stayed on as an admissions counselor. In his time as a student at UChicago, he was a member of the wrestling team and deeply involved in the house system, including 2 years as an RA.
Awesome, thank you. Hi, everybody. My bit here to tell you a little bit more about how to write an effective college essay. So in my role as an admissions counselor, this is now my 4th year as an admissions counselor at UChicago. I've read thousands and thousands of essays, including a lot of ones that are personal statements, which are going to be more general, and a lot of very specific supplement essays as well. So I will talk about kind of both of those elements. We start sharing my screen and get rolling. So I want to start off talking about the personal statement. This is kind of the more general college application essay, really. There are a lot of colleges that will require a personal statement, and a lot of the elements from a personal statement are going to be relevant in like short answer sort of questions that you may see colleges include on their applications as well. So when we're talking about the personal statement, it really is your chance to kind of introduce yourself. First and foremost, that's sort of the first place in an application that us as application readers are hearing your voice, hearing kind of the words that you want us to understand about you. And so I encourage you to conceptualize your personal statement that way, but I also want to talk a little bit more about some of the kind of strategies that go into actually building a really successful college essay. So there's kind of 3 main topics that I want to break down, and that would be spell check, style, and substance, that alliteration to help out a little bit. But we're going to dive into each of these and talk a little bit about how they actually interact with each other and how you can use each of these different sort of skills to really shine in the application process itself. So the first one might seem kind of silly to even be talking about, but spell check, proofread, make sure that there's no glaring mistakes. Most colleges aren't going to, really lose their mind if there's like one minor typo, but it's also something that is easy to make sure that you're ironing out those little errors before clicking submit on an application. So first, I want to talk about using automated spell checkers. That's totally fine, right? The spell check function of Word and things like that, that will actually give you the just double checking that everything that you're putting into that essay is an actual word and all of that. And I'll circle back to that in a moment. But the other big piece that I want to encourage students to do is to always have someone else read your essay. When you go and sit down to write something, right, you've probably got ideas, floating around in your head. And just about every time that you go back and read that essay, you're going to hear what you wanted to say, even if that's not exactly what you typed down. So either give yourself time, right? Start early when you're writing your essays and come back to your essays. That's a strategy that definitely helps sometimes as well. Or share your essays with a trusted friend, with a trusted adult, like a parent or a guardian, a teacher, counselors. There are people around you that are going to be able to help and would be happy to do so, I'm sure. So be confident to actually share those thoughts and those ideas you have, and to actually use some of those resources that you do have. The other piece that I want to mention with that, though, is that it is really obvious to us when an essay is written by a 50-year-old lawyer versus a 17-year-old, junior or senior in high school. So make sure that you aren't losing your own voice as you are going through these revision processes and making sure that things do actually kind of fit together. The kind of tone that you should be trying to strike is casual, but also professional at the same time. And I know that sounds like an oxymoron, and how do you actually even do that? But the moral of the story is that you want to be put together and professional and presentable, but you do, like I said, want your authentic voice coming through. And so being careful of not losing that voice as people offer up advice to you as well. So both of those, it's a delicate balance for sure to strike there. The other part that I want to mention is, again, to circle back, is that those automated processes aren't perfect and they don't necessarily know what you are trying to say. So just as one kind of brief example, which I have unfortunately read multiple times, is something along these lines, right? One of the hardest but most rewarding experiences of my high school career has been my participation in the International Bachelorette program. I'm not sure what that would be. It may be a thing. It's probably not what the student was trying to talk about, right? And like I said, we've come across this multiple times. This is referring to an IB program, if you're familiar with those, International Baccalaureate, not Bachelorette. So those sort of things, as you may be well aware, your computer programs don't necessarily catch. And so that's where another human's eyes can really help you out. To move on to that kind of second category, I started talking about this a little bit, the style that you want to be kind of bringing into your essays and talking about when you're actually sending that off, is that we do want to be interested by what you're saying, and the sort of style and the tone that you bring into your essay is really what can make an essay interesting to read and help hold our attention, which is obviously always a good thing. That said, we don't expect everybody to be the most brilliant writer in the world, and that's totally fine. But you should be thinking about, how do you develop your writing to, not all use the same type of sentence structure, and how to use different openings to ideas, and how to blend your different ideas together. So that's kind of what we're talking about with style. Now, as you are thinking about, how do I be interesting in my essays, you also don't want to lose track of what you're actually trying to say. As we're reading applications, we are reading many applications, and we want to be able to pull information kind of easily and understand the who cares, right? So what about what you're trying to convey to us. So if you are getting too much wrapped up in kind of creative language, that's not necessarily helpful. To give you a little bit of an example here, right? Sizzle, crackle, I alight from my chamber, sleep in my dewy eyes, to a freshly crafted morning repast. My maternal and paternal figures sip Java in the morning haze as we mutter greetings of the day over applewood smoked gammon with a side of sourdough loaf. It probably sounds pretty ridiculous, and I could probably tell you just about no one talks that way. Now, this is not actually something that I've read in a college application essay, thankfully, but this would just kind of be one way to say a breakfast, right? The substance of what you're actually trying to say does really definitely still need to come through. And again, so what of what this sentence would be gets lost in trying to use words they looked up in a thesaurus or something like that. So don't let your, again, style kind of get in the way of conveying the message that you're trying to get across. Style should not come before substance, right? So that gets us to our last piece, right? Our substance. Again, we're looking for why is this important? Why is this relevant? Especially when you talk about your personal statement, you have a lot of bandwidth to what is relevant to your college application, right? Like I said, it is your introduction. It is something that we encourage you to show us what you particularly care about. And so you do have a lot of different options, right? And as you're talking about the substance, you want to be able to bring the things that are important, but know that not every single thing that happened to you is important. And so being judicious with kind of what you involve, you can talk about one specific thing, you can talk about a lot of different things. There's not a right or wrong answer there, but again, we want to make sure that we are still finding things that are relevant to your experience and to how that might impact your, ability in college and what that looks like. That's my very quick rundown of personal statements, kind of general essay writing tips. All of the stuff I talked about there is definitely relevant to the other pieces of the college application and the other essays that you might encounter out there. But another really common essay that I want to make sure I talk about before I give up the rest of my time, and or don't take up the rest of your time rather, is the why us kind of question, right? This is a question that a lot of schools do ask in some form. Some of them ask in, again, kind of short answer questions that you may provide, but some may ask you to write a full essay about why do you want to come to my institution, right? The tricky part of these types of essays is that you have to balance being very specific to the school, but also being very specific to yourself. You have to connect the things that you are talking about to you. And again, show me, why does it matter? I don't just need to know a cool, list of cool things that you know about my school. What we also want to know is how that connects and ties into your personal interests. So why are you excited about that institution? I want to emphasize something called the whiteout test. You may come across this at other places. You might hear people talk about the whiteout test. Essentially, if I covered up the name of my school in a why us essay and couldn't figure out that you were talking about my school, or could plug in a different school's name and it still makes sense, then it's not specific enough, right? So we do need to know that you're being very specific with showing that you do understand what's going on at an individual institution. So again, tying all those different ideas together. The last thing that I want to point out is looking again at one quick example. So I'm excited about attending, and sorry, this is going to be specific to U Chicago because that's what I know. But I am excited about attending the University of Chicago because of your great location in the city of Chicago and your amazing programs in economics and competitive Division III tennis team. I can't wait to take this economics class with Professor Stephen Levitt and learn everything I can from such talented faculty and a house and blah, blah, blah. You can read. This might sound very, very specific, right? Presumably the student cares about econ, and so there is connection there. But something to keep in mind is that we also kind of know when you can plug in and different sorts of ideas and kind of copy paste into a template, right? This is kind of what that might look like, right? I'm excited about attending insert name of school because you are located in city and you offer major and sport, right? That sort of thing, it does really start to stick out. And so again, kind of connecting the different sorts of ideas throughout this so that it is a little bit less plug and play, a little bit less choppy when you're talking about these supplement essays is something that is going to be very helpful. Schools that ask you to write things specifically for them want to know that you are actually thinking specifically about their institution. So I'm going to wrap up. Those are two kind of different kinds of essays that you may encounter in the college application process. A lot of the things that I talked about do also apply to any sort of writing when it comes to any sort of different application that you're talking about. But obviously colleges have their own particular bits that they're interested in because it is a unique experience in your life. All good.
Thank you so much for that. We now have our final speaker, Dr. Tracy Baines. Dr. Baines is the founder and president of STEP, Student Expedition Program, a college access and leadership program for low-income Arizona youth. She obtained a doctorate in oceanography from Scripps Institute of Oceanography in 1993. She joined Columbia University, the CA Education Association, University of Pittsburgh, Long Island University, University of Montana, and Prescott College.
Thank you so much. I'm going to get to my screen share here, and we are going to talk about the common application. And so you all can see my screen. This is just a sign in. You can Google common application. So this is a beautiful tool for you all because this is one place you can go that most schools are listed on the common application, and you can do one common application that's going to go to a lot of different schools. Now, so this would be where you could create an account. If you just Google Common App, you create an account. Now, it's important to know that you can start your Common App. It typically opens for seniors on August 1. of your senior year, so right before your senior year. Now you can take a full year before that, so even in August before your junior year, and start looking through it. You can get an account, you can look through it, you can fill in basic information, and it will save over. So you can certainly start exploring that now as a junior. So this is what the Common Application looks like. And I'll just take you through these different tabs. So this would be what's considered your dashboard. And so once you add schools, you would have a list of your schools there that you want to apply to through the Common Application. Now, in Arizona, there are 2 Arizona universities that use the Common Application, and that is Arizona State University and the University of Arizona. So you can see that I've listed Arizona State University here. The way I would add a college is go to college search, and then I would simply type in University of, and you can see it popping up right there. If you don't see it popping up, you write the whole thing in there and it should come up down here. Sometimes you type in something and there's multiple schools that have that name in it, and so you need to find the school that is the correct school. So if I pop on University of Arizona, I'm going to add it to my colleges. And then if you go back to this tab that is my colleges, you would see this added, the University of Arizona. In alphabetical order is how these are listed. What you also notice on this is that there are some scholarships that will also use the Common Application. So the Jack Kent Cook Foundation Scholarship is one of those. And they would be giving you instructions to go and fill out a Common Application. So this is just a list of your colleges. This is the dashboard that also shows that. And then if you click on this tab right here, Common App, this is where you would actually complete the Common Application. And there's a Common Application part of this process. And then there's specific questions that each college is going to ask you, and they might ask you for, as our speaker just said, you know, these additional supplemental essays. But let's look at the Common Application, and this portion of the application would go to every single one of your schools that you have listed on the Common Application. And that's the beauty of the Common Application, is you have to only fill out all of this information once, and it's going to be sent to all your schools as you submit to each school. So in the first part of it you see is profile. So I've got the profile that I've clicked on right here. And, you know, it's just going to ask you for some basic information, you know, your name, your, you know, have you ever used any of the names, your sex, your date of birth, etc. It's also going to ask for these things: your address, your contact details, demographics, geography, language, citizenship, and Common App fee waiver, which if you are coming from a low-income background, you can request a fee waiver so that you do not have to actually pay to apply to a school. And I want to emphasize, for any students coming from low-income families, no school should require you to pay an application fee. If you don't get it through this Common App, you can always just write to the school and ask for an application fee. So don't hesitate to do that if that is your situation. So, you know, you could open up each one of these parts, and it's going to bring up the questions about address and etc. Okay, so it's very easy to navigate through this. So the second section is family, and they're going to ask about your parents, your siblings. Again, this is all information you could fill out in your junior year very easily. You can get a head start on the Common Application. The next section is education. They're going to ask you to put your school in. So again, you know, say we want to change this, and I'm going to change it to, if I search by the school name, I'm just going to change it to Metro Tech. And let's see, no Metrotech. Well, let's go with, should be in here somewhere. Let's go with North High School. We see it right there. And then you're going to continue. And then it would populate right here. It's going to ask you questions about your school. It's going to ask you about if you've gone to, multiple high schools. They want to know all the high schools you've gone to. If you've taken any courses at a college or university while you were in high school, ask about grades, your most recent year courses, any honors that you have, any community-based organizations you're involved with. STEP is one of those. Be a Leader Foundation, for example, Questbridge. If you're involved with an organization that helps guide you through this process, then you would be entering that here. And they ask about your future plans. For something like this, when they're asking about your future plans, just put your best, your best idea right now. Don't get caught up and worried about that. Just put what you might be interested in right now. So that's that section, education. And you can see this is all very straightforward. And then the next section is testing. And it is going to ask you if you want to self-report scores. We always advise our students to say no to this unless they already know that they have really great scores. You can always send scores individually to schools that require them. As has been mentioned on this call, because of COVID, most schools, if not all schools, have gone test optional for this year, and that might be carrying over to next year. So get some advice on this before you decide you're going to self-report your scores, because if you do self-report your scores on this Common App, it's every single school that you are using to apply through the Common App will see your scores. And sometimes your scores can help you, and sometimes your scores are not going to help you. So you just want to think very intentionally about this. That's testing. And then this is a very important portion of the Common application, and that is the activities section. So they're going to ask you if you want to report any activities you've done. You definitely do want to report activities. And think about this as everything you do outside of sitting in a classroom, or everything you do outside of sitting on a Zoom call, that is your class. And so that would include any clubs you're involved in, any volunteering or work you do outside of school, sports, and importantly, it includes family responsibilities. So if you have to come home every day from school or get off of your Zoom call, and then your responsibility is to take care of your younger siblings or your cousins or your whatever younger people are in your family, if you're responsible for taking care of them, schools want to know that you're spending 2 to 3 to 5, whatever hours a day looking after your younger siblings. That tells them that you're taking on this responsibility. And that's a really good thing for schools to know. So they recognize you're doing the family, you're taking care of your siblings, and therefore you can't be involved in clubs, but you're also showing great responsibility and great maturity in doing that. So it's a very good thing. And you're going to list, they're going to ask you to add an activity at a time. And you want to think about everything you've done from 9th grade all the way through your senior year. And that's everything that you do, again, outside of sitting in a class. So I think students often make the mistake, oh, this is just something I do. I don't really think it's important. But if it's something you're spending your time on, schools want to know about that. And so don't shortchange yourself. Really think back on your 9th grade. What did I do? What clubs were I in? What were I in? What activities did I do? And also think about your summertime. What did you do in the summer? Did you hold down a job? Did you do some volunteering? All of that for each year and the summers, you want to report in this activities section. And the big piece of advice I can give about the activities section, there are really two parts of the application where you can really stand out as an individual. When you think about filling out a college application, most of it is statistics, right? They're wanting to know, where you live, what high school you went to, what your grades were, what your courses that you took. But in the activity section and the essay section, that's where you can really pop out of the application to admission directors. And so I'm going to really encourage you, when you do your activity section, to really give details. So for example, this person's editor-in-chief of their school newspaper. We want to know specific, the admissions wants to know, well, what responsibilities did you have? What did you specifically do as editor-in-chief? And the more specific you can get about it, the more engaging it is for admissions directors to read about. So try to stay away from general statements, I run the newspaper. Well, that's pretty apparent with just editor-in-chief. Tell us exactly what you did, what you do. And this, let's see, this is another thing I want to show you, which is neat, this preview button at the top of every page. So once you enter information in, you can preview it. And so here we can see all the information that's been put in for the activity section. And you can see here, for example, as editor-in-chief of this school newspaper, this student has said, led a student staff of 15 to produce monthly paper covering school and local news, represented school at National Journalism Conference. So really giving some detail that makes you kind of jump out of the page. So this is a very important section that I really think you need to spend time on. Just as we were saying, you really need to spend time on your essays. This is the other place where you can really do this well and give detail. If you are very deeply involved in one of these activities, there's only a very small number of words that they allow you to put in this activity section. You can use the additional information to provide more information on any of these given activities. And we're going to look at that in a second. So this activity section, I can't say enough about this. We're going to go to the writing section. But before I go into the essays, I'm going to go scroll down and talk about the additional information for a second, because it really connects to the activity section we were just talking about. So again, if we were to do let's see here, if we were to do a preview of this, I just want to show what this person has done in additional information, this additional information section. They've given additional information about their activities because they had more to say than the space allowed. And when you do this, you just want to do it in a very organized fashion. You can see we do it with bullets. It's not an essay. You're not writing an essay. You're just trying to provide information that is easy for admission directors to immediately grasp and read. And so you see what this person has very, very well organized and has great detail. If you have additional activities that you want to talk about, this is another place you would do it. There's only 10 activities in the activity sections. There's only 10 spots. So you can put additional activities here. So really this connects, this additional information connects with the activity section. But in another thing that you can put in additional information is anything that you want to tell admissions. Say you had a dip in grades. Say your parent lost their job and you had to take on some shifts at McDonald's and it affected your grades because you were spending time working. You want to explain in this section what happened there. If there's a dip in your grades, you want to explain what happened, and you can do that in the additional information section. Okay, so if we go up to the personal essay again now in the rating section of this, you will see listed here after you've put all the colleges that you want to apply to, they will tell you if this essay is required or not required for each school. The bottom line is if it's required for one school, it's required. Because remember, this is going to be sent to all your schools. So, and these are the prompts that you can choose from. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. But just know that the last prompt is always any topic of your choice. So if you don't have a prompt above that you can really speak to and write about, you could always pick this, share an essay on any topic of your choice, and then write whatever you have to say. So there's a lot of flexibility here. And just another tip for your essay is you don't want to write it in this little box. You don't want to write it in the Common Application. You want to write it in a Word document. You want to edit it. You want to have people read it, give you feedback, etc. Get it to a place where you just are very excited about it and it's ready to go. And then you copy and paste it into here. Maximum of 650 words. But you're not necessarily trying to reach 650. You know, that's not the magic number, but you can't go beyond that. Okay. One more thing on additional information I just want to note, and this is COVID related. So there is for the first time this year, there is a space for you to be able to say how you were impacted by COVID. So community disruptions here, such as COVID and natural disasters, can have deep and long-lasting impacts. If you need, this space is yours to describe those impacts on you and or your family. And so do you wish to share anything on this topic? If you click yes, then this box will open up. And again, you can describe how COVID has impacted you. So how am I doing on time? Probably getting to the end of my time. Did somebody chime in? How are we doing?
Yep, I think you've about finished up with your time.
Okay, so I just want to just say in general that this is really useful tool. There's just one more thing I want to say super quick, which is I said this was a Common App part of it. Now, if you go to any one of these schools, there will be questions for that specific school that you have to complete and or essays. So just know that you will actually submit for each school and you have to do the school part of it too. So I will end there.
Fantastic. Thank you all. I believe now it's time to go into our Q&A.
All right, so I'll be emceeing our Q&A today. For our attendees, if you have any additional questions that you haven't put in the Q&A section so far, feel free to put those in now. For our first question, I know several of our panelists served or worked with the AmeriCorps, and one of our attendees was wondering if you guys could talk a little more about what your experience in the AmeriCorps looked like.
Yeah, I'd love to start off. So this is actually my first term with AmeriCorps. I'm currently partnered with the NACRC working under the Advise AZ program. So this is a great program. I get to work with a lot of the local high schools, specifically Flagstaff High School. I participate in some career planning and some post-secondary goal matching for a lot of students. So this translates into working with classes, working with sometimes the whole senior class at once to do career planning and lessons for large groups of people. And it's a great opportunity to really experience what it's like working in a school environment, as well as providing mentorship to other students. So it helps you understand a little bit more about the college going process and let you share that with other students as well. And it's really, really satisfactory seeing students succeed after you've helped them in certain fields that they may have been struggling with or may just need that little bit of additional resources to really succeed and excel in.
Is it okay if I hop in too? And the experience that I had was probably very similar to Rohan, since I served at the Northern Arizona College Resource too, but I just wanted to give a little different perspective. So I actually moved to Arizona from Michigan to do my term of service with AmeriCorps. And I think one of the coolest, coolest parts of AmeriCorps too was that I got to see so many places in Arizona that most Arizonans didn't even know existed too, because we were serving high school students all over Northern Arizona. So I went to Window Rock, I was going to, you know, Tuba City. I got to go to Round Valley and Lake Havasu. And so coming from Michigan, like I've seen a lot of water, but I'd never seen the landscape that's in Arizona. And so that was such a cool, unique experience. And I obviously fell in love with college access, which I'd never heard of before I started my term of service with AmeriCorps. And so now college access is my life. And so AmeriCorps was such an influential like step into my career. I became the director of the NACRC afterwards. And then I got to move down to Phoenix to work for an amazing organization called College Success Arizona, where I currently work. And so it was a game changer for me. And so just a really, really cool experience. And I'll let the other people speak too if they wanted to share. But I think one of the other cool things about AmeriCorps is that there's different pathways that you could go down. So I did state and national. There's opportunities for that's called NCCC, and I need to look up what it stands for exactly. I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but basically you're starting your AmeriCorps term of service with a cohort, and it's specifically for 18 to 22-year-olds. And so there's different pathways for AmeriCorps too, where it can be more that cohort where you travel around the nation together, and you're often you know, housed at different institutions across the US too, post-secondary institutions. So not only are you getting an opportunity to, you know, serve as an AmeriCorps member, you're also kind of doing campus tours along the way. So so many different opportunities for AmeriCorps too.
All right, thank you. So we had another question for Justin Klein asking about essays, and they were saying it sounds hard to fit the style and substance in 300 words, and they're asking if there's any strategies for whittling down their responses to meet the word limit.
Sure, that's definitely hard, right? Especially if you have a if you have a lot of ideas, it's always difficult to squeeze those into the word limits that the college is asking you to narrow it down, and that's an unfortunate reality. I think when it comes to, you know, the way that kind of style and substance, you know, mix with each other in your essay, really they're working together rather than, you know, being kind of separatable ideas, right? So when you're talking about style, it's sort of how you're presenting the ideas that are there rather than the actual ideas themselves. That's, I think, kind of the distinction that you want to try to use. There are definitely ways to, you know, have your style come through and to be an interesting writer that don't, you know, take up all sorts of words and are overly verbose, right? That was, I think, one of the things I was trying to get across with that, you know, absolutely ridiculous example that I pulled up earlier. The balance is going to be in which ideas you're actually talking about. And so as you're trying to figure out what the important ideas in your essay are, if you know, just typed out an essay and you went above your word limit and now you're worried how you actually narrow it down. My advice to you is to think about how, you know, what is the like main idea, right? In like one or two sentences that like who cares moment, right? That is actually in that essay. If you can start with, here's the really important stuff, right? Then thinking back and going through the different ideas that are supporting it and thinking about, okay, the next most important thing is this, right? You can kind of build back up once you've gotten all your ideas down. I think that is, at least for me personally, that's kind of a style of revision that helps me, is to start from the bottom and build on top of it. But obviously that's one solution. That would be my general advice. Like I said, the style is not something that if you can cut out significant words without losing the meaning of what you're trying to convey, that might be too much style, right? So that's what we are kind of talking about when we're talking about being direct, very digestible with your information. Talk the way that you normally talk. It shouldn't take up extra words and extra space in your essay.
I'd like to chime in too. I too have read a lot of essays, and I find that short, simple statements that you're building a story with are much better than long, flowy, artistically, interesting statements. Think about it this way. When you pick up a book, a novel, a book that you just want to read, if you read the first page and you are trying to figure out what they're saying and you're trying to follow all this, you're trying to look up words because you don't understand the meaning, etc., or you can't even follow the sentences, how likely it is that you're going to be reading that book? You're probably going to put it down. But if you read a book that is like simple statements, but really is getting you involved in the story, it's very interesting, it grabs your attention, but it's easy to read. When you think about admission directors reading hundreds of essays, make your essay easy to read. And you can build a very amazing, wonderful, deeply impactful essay with very simple statements. And that's what I would really encourage you to do.
Thank you. Those are both really good pieces of advice. I think we have time for one final question. And this one's asking if either maybe Megan or Rohan or anyone else who might want to chime in, asking if they could explain or elaborate on what a competitive school is.
I can definitely chat about that. Let me turn on my video. Sorry, my dog was in my face. So I did answer in the chat a little bit as well. So the national average score on the ACT is about a 21, and the national average score on the SAT is about a 1051. And really what we tell students is that a good score is really just the score you need to get into the school you want or get the scholarship you need. So we always advise students to do their research, figure out if there's a scholarship they need or a specific school that they're trying to get into. Really try to shoot for that score. And don't really put so much pressure on yourself to get a good score per se, just get the score that you need for what your goals are.
Thank you. I'm going to then pass it over to Naina for our closing statement.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Naina. First off, I would like to thank all of our amazing speakers for being here and providing so much insight about the college admissions process. I'd also like to thank all the attendees for coming to our event, for asking questions, and taking the next step towards where you'll go after high school. This has been an amazingly informative event, and I believe everyone has learned something new and heard some great advice, especially for the current situation with COVID-19. I hope everyone here is also interested in attending some of our future webinars as well. We'll be having our next College Series event, which is Finding the Right College Fit, in 2 weeks on December 3rd at 6 p.m. So make sure to be there. There should be a survey link in the chat right about now. So if you can please fill it out and provide some feedback on tonight's event, that'll be great. Yeah, so once again, everyone, thank you and have a good night.